Hello and welcome everyone out there in the Actual Tech Media audience. Thank you so much for joining us on this special webinar event. Today's topic is number one, Office 365 Backup, a technical deep dive. This is presented in partnership with Veeam. Thank you so much for joining us on the webinar today. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator. As always, we want these to be educational events, and we encourage your questions. More and more companies are moving to Office 365, and it's important to make sure that you protect your data, whether it's on premises or in Office 365. It's got to be protected, and that's all too often kind of an afterthought, if you will. So this is an important topic for anyone out there concerned about protecting their Office 365 data, and we all should be. We encourage your questions. They're in the questions pane. Many of you have already found that and said hello or good morning from across the United States. Good afternoon to everyone out there around the world. We appreciate that. We also want your technical questions. We will be doing a Q&A session here with our experts, and we need your questions. I'll talk about our best question prize here in just a moment to help encourage those questions. But first, I want to call your attention to two handouts that are there in the handouts tab of your audience console. One is the 30-day free trial of Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, and the other one is for a full download of an ebook. It's the Conversational Teams Backup ebook. So make sure that you download those resources before you go. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, I'll announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing would have already occurred. The prize terms can be found there in the handouts tab. And then, as I mentioned, we also have our best question prize for an Amazon $50 gift card. Of course, you have to ask a question to be entered into that and also meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms. And so with that, it's time to get this webinar started. And I'm excited to introduce you now to our two expert presenters. Welcome, Corinne Bissett, Technologist in Product Strategy at Veeam, and Edward Watson, Senior Global Product Marketing Manager, also at Veeam. Edward and Corinne, it's great to have you on. I'll first hand it off to you, Edward. Take it away.
Great. Well, thank you, David, and thanks for the introduction there. As you mentioned, backing up Microsoft 365 data is something all organizations should be thinking about, all organizations should be doing. And hopefully this technical deep dive will help everyone kind of understand how Veeam's approach is. And hopefully you'll pick up some good nuggets in terms of deployments and other things of that nature. But before we get into the presentation itself and all the technical goodness, let's cover the reasons why we choose to back up. And for many of you that have seen one of our presentations before, this may look familiar, but for those who haven't, we look at these 7 reasons from a market perspective and what some of the challenges are that people or organizations are dealing with, but also our own customer base as well, and some of the reasons why they came to Veeam. So first, some of the milder, or I'm not going to say non-critical, but some of the milder data loss situations and maybe more innocent ones, accidental user deletions, right? Those may be things we see all the time. Where's my file? Maybe it's in the user bin, recycle bin, maybe it's somewhere else. I've misplaced it. I need to get that data back. And it's not so much getting the data loss itself that is really one of the critical points. Is that data able to be recovered? And a lot of that can sometimes hinge on the retention policies and some of the confusions around how long our own long-term retention needs are put in place for. So in Microsoft's case, they have their own retention policies that are very default and standardized. Your department or your department head may have their own different retention policies and ways that they view those policies. So there can be a lot of confusion around how long are we actually holding on to this data for. So that's definitely a risk of data loss occurring. And also misconfiguration in the case of just IT admins simply really not knowing exactly what they're doing in some cases. So when setting up these retention policies, they can make some mistakes, and that's Time and time again, there's instances that we've seen in market of data loss occurring because of that user error and admin error as well. Internal security threats, of course. Sometimes people say, well, how often do internal threats actually happen? I can't give you the precise number of how often this actually happens, but what I can say is that the risk is there. There is inherent risk of our own internal, bad eggs, if you will. Maybe some departing employees causing a little bit of data loss or harm to the organization before they depart. There is always that risk, or even consultants in some cases that may be disgruntled and may want to delete some SharePoint sites or user accounts before they depart. External security threats, of course, we know that ransomware is becoming just more and more sophisticated as the years go by. And certainly this is very much top of mind and one of the top reasons that we see that organizations are now wanting to make sure they have much more control over this data. Legal and compliance for many organizations. Perhaps there's a few audience members today that have to quickly find and search and recover various files and documents. And really, the way that we look at it natively in O365, it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough to not only find but also recover. There's many different steps. There's a handbook of different steps that you have to follow in order to find and search and get that data back. And we do see that third-party backup solutions like Veeam can definitely offer a speedy way to quickly get search and find and recover capabilities for those legal and compliance purposes. Of course, all of these reasons are compounded by the different various applications and environments that we're deploying, and certainly Teams is no different. Teams has become certainly one of the most deployed applications in history for Microsoft, and Teams is where we work today. I mean, that's where we are. And really, this is on the list individually because Teams operates in a very different way than many different applications, in that it is not a self-contained application. It actually takes from many different applications and is almost a universe on the back end that you have to consider in a very specific way to make sure you're getting ample backup and recovery capabilities. So moving on from these 7 reasons, the solution itself, and really hopefully there's more than one thing you take away from today, but if there's one thing to remember about Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365, it's all about eliminating the risk of losing access to data. Whether that's Exchange, online, OneDrive for Business, Teams, giving you the flexibility to back up to any location you choose, protecting you again from all of those risks we spoke about in the previous slide, giving you the restore capabilities that you need for your items and files, and ultimately helping you meet those legal and compliance requirements. So enough from me for now, and we're going to hand it over to Corinne to cover exactly how to start planning your Office 365 backup. Take it away, Corinne.
Thank you. So to kick it off for the basics here, we'd like to talk a little bit about our installation package because this leads up to the components and the way that they're going to be deployed within the environment. So we start off with the Backup 360 MSI. This is going to be your centralized console, the brains, if you would, or the command center of your entire configuration. This is where, say, the RESTful API commands may communicate with and where the backup proxies are managed from, as well as the repositories. Then from here, we actually have 3 explorers that we install. Now, these are Application Restore Explorers. The Application Restore Explorers are for Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. We do cover OneDrive as well, but if you know a lot about OneDrive, this is included in the SharePoint Explorer. Moving on here, once you've installed the components, you get something that's going to be your backup server, which is your command center. And then it's automatically going to be used as your proxy unless you deploy additional proxies and configure them in your infrastructure. Then the repository by default is going to be on your C drive, but you also have the ability to scale out the components. So when you go from just having all of the components on a single machine, which is what we refer to as our simple deployment, we move into the advanced types of deployments where you're able to do additional processing outside the centralized command server, whether or not you need to place things in different regions or if it's necessary to have more servers because you have a much larger environment. Now, based on this scale, we look at machines that are 8 CPU and 32 gigs of RAM. A single VBO instance can actually cover up to 1,000,000 objects. And these million objects can be spread across several different proxies to equal out to be about 5,000 users per job. Now, if you're doing multiple jobs per proxies, you can load balance those proxies over multiple jobs and the maximum configuration of each of those controller components. Now, what is considered an object? An object is anything like a primary mailbox, an archive mailbox, shared mailbox, or any SharePoint site, including personal and collaborative entities. If you're going to back up Microsoft Teams, the Microsoft Teams application would be a separate object within your object count per proxy in your scaled out infrastructure. These have the ability to be placed either on, say, an on-prem type of deployment. So if you download directly from the website, you can install a server locally to your infrastructure and have a local storage type if this is what your compliance needs. But we have the ability to apply to many different cloud deployments from Microsoft Azure, IBM, and AWS directly from each of these marketplaces. Or you can deploy to any cloud entity that you're able to spin up a Windows machine. We have many service providers that also allow you the ability to go out and deploy these to different regions or to have some of that workload taken off of your backup infrastructure or your on-prem infrastructure, which can help with delegation and if you don't have, say, the IT staff to take care of these entities. The supported storage range from object storage, which is actually the ideal object or the ideal backup repository type, because this offers you an infinitely scaled out infrastructure on the back end, so you don't need to worry about that on-prem type of footprint. We also work with direct storage types, so if you do have something directly attached to that server, you're able to back up directly to that back end data. We also support SAN types of technologies, but there are some limitations depending on your network. You need to make sure everything is within one hop of a network connection away from your primary server. And we all know that networks can have hiccups, which could lead to some type of data drop from the primary server to those repositories. So ideally, you want to use a direct attach type of storage or an object storage if possible. With these, we have two different retention types. The item level retention is based off of the modified date for that retention period, meaning if you have files that have been created or modified, say within the last month, and your retention is set for a month, every file created or modified within that date would be within the backup. Anything older or anything that had been modified or created before that period would not. With snapshot-based retention, we actually take a complete image of your entire environment as a base, and we keep all of the data within that specific period for the defined retention time. So if you delete a file and you're using snapshot-based retention with a month's worth of retention, you would still be able to retrieve any file from your infrastructure from the last month. Taking a look at this scaled out, we have the backup server in the center of our console here, and you're able to deploy to all of the different types of infrastructures from Hyper-V and virtualization types of networks to cloud infrastructures. Then you can scale out to many different disk types. You're not locked into just, say, using object storage or file shares. you can have a combination of these different repository types for the data types that make sense for your business. This same console can take in a hybrid infrastructure as well as a cloud-only types of infrastructures for Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. And then we have explorers for each of these applications. These applications will be covered here a little bit more in depth by Edward. And over to you.
Okay, thanks, Corinne. So let's look at how to back up and restore objects with Veeam. So let's first unpack how exactly to create a backup job. And what you'll notice here is that there are some very simple steps, from just launching the backup job wizard to specifying a name, selecting and excluding objects, specifying your proxy and where to store the data in terms of the repository, and then simply specifying your scheduling options. So some pretty simple steps there to create a backup job. Firstly, we're going to select the backup scope. And what you're going to notice right off the bat is that it's a very simple process. So you'll notice that, and probably you might have seen that our mantra is simple, flexible, reliable at Veeam. And truly that is reflected in the UI. So you can be essentially as flexible as you need in terms of selecting, excluding objects from the backup scope and from your entire organization all the way down to individual objects. So even if you select your entire organization, you still have the flexibility to edit down to an individual object to be configured for the specific job. Instead of selecting all the objects you want to back up individually, you can instead dynamically add objects and exclude the users you don't want within an Office 365 group. So again, very simple, flexible way of including and excluding objects and setting up that initial backup scope. Next, we have the scheduling options. So for scheduling options, you can create a schedule that makes sense to your business, tailor-made for your business, and back up really as often as you need to. And really what's great about Veeam is you can back up users based on the value of their data. So your leadership team, you may want to back up a few times per day based on your RPO standard. And for perhaps an average user, you may want to back up only once per day based on your RPO, or maybe once a week. So really, the schedule allows you to be very flexible, and also for a specific date and time, or periodic based on a schedule with nearly continuous backup windows. You also have the option to offset the start time in case you have overlapping backup jobs. There's also a termination window, so you can set up for production hours so the network's not being used during those times. So again, very flexible, simple way of setting up your scheduling. And next, we're going to go into the Veeam Explorers. And what's great about these Veeam Explorers is they're basically these specialized applications that allow users to explore and recover within each application very easily. So we have one for Exchange, we have one for SharePoint, we have one for OneDrive and Teams specifically. And with each of these total, you get a total of 40 restore options, which is by far the industry-leading amount of restore options available for a third-party backup vendor. You get the in-place and out-of-place restores, and what that basically means is you can recover data to the original location, which is also known as an in-place restore, or you can restore to a different location, which is an out-of-place restore. You can browse content from the Veeam Explorer component directly, and essentially that reads the entire content in a very hierarchical format, so it allows you to essentially browse very easily based on the object you're wanting to peruse. For searching for content, the Veeam Explorers definitely allow for some really good capabilities in terms of search and find. They allow for an advanced find capability, so you can really perform those sophisticated e-discovery searches using different criteria based on data and metadata as well. So that's it on the Veeam Explorers. Definitely a differentiator for Veeam in terms of what we're able to deliver to users. In terms of exploring data, we offer quite a few different ways you can actually explore, 4 different ways actually you can explore data. First is exploring the backup jobs themselves. So that will essentially load the latest restore point created by a selected job. Single organizations you can explore by, that loads restore points created by a job of the selected organization, and exploring all organizations. So restoring a point of each backup of every organization. The 4th one is exploring a point in time. So we have 2 different options here, and you can choose a backup state, whether that's the latest available state, so selecting the option to load the latest state of items in a backup file, or using a very customized way, which is using the following point in time. So you can select a very customized option there to load a backup as of a specific date and time. And of course, the restore options are very simple as well. So there are actually 3 major steps for restoring data with Veeam. And that's just launching the restore wizard, selecting the restore scope, choosing whether you want to use modern or basic. It's modern by default. And then authenticating into your Microsoft 365 organization to then perform that restore. So again, very, very simple, very easy steps there for restoring the data. And now that we're kind of wrapping up here, I just want to leave you with a few key difference makers. So with Veeam, you have complete flexibility in terms of the infrastructure. So you can choose any storage. You don't have storage lock-in. If you want to use Azure this year and maybe AWS tomorrow or next year, then you're able to do that. You're not locked into a particular storage, which we know is very important as organizations. Priorities change and strategies change around different storage types. So we do not make you use our storage. We don't have our own cloud storage. We work with some of the best service providers, best hyperscale public clouds available, and give you the best options available to you. The next is really maintaining control over the appropriate level of protection to different users. We talked about protecting users based on the value of their data. That's something that's very much unique to Veeam in terms of the ability to not just hand select all the different users you want to protect. You can have bulk selections and really making sure that you can protect different users based on the value of their data. Very, very important. Also, we mentioned the 40 different recovery options, and ultimately that's to give your business the options needed to restore the data, get the data back in the form you need it, and in the format you need it, in order to make sure that you can simply minimize downtime and get your business back up and running as soon as possible. So those are some of the key difference makers for Veeam. And ultimately, we'd like you to see for yourself. So don't take my word for it. Definitely go on TrustRadius or G2 Crowd. We have many different raw and unfiltered reviews from our customers, and definitely some great opinions and quotes on there that you can peruse through. And yeah, we definitely highly encourage you to see what other IT administrators and companies are saying about Veeam. Lastly, we encourage you, David did mention the handouts that we have. We definitely encourage you to read up or share this Conversational Microsoft Teams Backup ebook. As more and more companies adopt Microsoft Teams, it is absolutely imperative to protect this data and really understand the various intricacies. Like I mentioned at the beginning, there are quite a few pitfalls and things to look out for. So we hope you'll read this book and become a little bit more informed on how you should adequately protect this critical data. And lastly, of course, see for yourself. It's very easy to take a free 30-day trial of Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. Simply go to veeam.com. You'll look under the SaaS category there and click that and simply download free trial. And from there, you'll simply download, accept the license agreement, and from there, you'll be able to get up and running and download the product. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and proceed with any questions that we have, David.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great presentation. Love those demos in there. Really cool to see exactly how this solution works. We've got a lot of great questions coming in. Thank you, everyone, for those questions. I guess we'll go ahead and start with this one. The first one I see here, they're asking, does the Veeam, oh, just lost it. Here we go. Does the Veeam Microsoft 365 backup and recovery solution provide sufficient e-discovery support enabling granular recovery of specific email messages?
Yes, our Explorers for Exchange allow you to search all kinds of content and criteria in any type of field within the message itself, and then gather those and export the individual messages that meet the specified criteria.
Nice. Very nice. And then next question, they're asking, can the retention policies for backups be adjusted to meet our compliance requirements?
So we have very flexible backup types that allow you to back up as often as you want to, as well as keep your data from anywhere from days to actually forever. So any type of compliance in between can be met within the same console.
Okay, nice. And then let's see, next question here. Did you say that Veeam Backup can run as a standalone, or does it require other Veeam products?
At this time, Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365 runs as a standalone client where you're able to do your M365 backups without the assistance of any other product from our suite.
Nice. Very nice. Let's see, next question here. There's multiple parts to this. Let's just start with the first one, I guess. That is, how many sequential backup copies does Veeam recommend be kept? For instance, if we back up multiple times a day, do we overwrite them or at least save another copy after that backup?
So the backup for Office 365 works very differently than it does for any other type of backup of, say, a physical or virtual infrastructure. We back up into a single database like file that has metadata on top of it. So all backup of that data is going to be within that file, including all versions based on your retention type. So you'll have all of your data regardless of how many times you back up during that day.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for explaining that. Justin here is asking, what's the best place to store the backups?
We don't actually have an actual preference ourselves. We want what's best for the customer in terms of where they store the data. So ultimately, the decision's up to you. We give you as many options as possible so that whatever your strategy is, you can utilize that strategy. But we don't have any particular preference ourselves as a company. It's totally giving you as many options as you can.
So I think I see the question that you're referring to here, David. There's actually a second part here about concern of losing complete access to your data if you're putting all of your eggs in one basket, for the best way to put it. We work with many different storage types as well as cloud providers. So you're able to do stuff, say, if you want to back up to Amazon or any other object storage provider. We're very agnostic in the form that we do anything that's S3 compatible. So if you're looking for an offsite solution that you don't want to just be all with Microsoft and that, we offer the ability to direct backup from Office 365 to these other object storage to kind of create a separation in your cloud providers.
I like that. Yeah, I like that approach. Next question here. Actually, I like this comment from Daniel, who says that they love Veeam. They use it for their backups. Great to hear that kind of feedback. Another question I wanted to ask you is specifically, how do you back up Microsoft Teams? They're wanting to know.
So Microsoft Teams, we're able to directly back up Teams within the Microsoft Teams application. And then anything to do with chats or conversations that happen between other entities, such as your emails and your calendars or through Exchange, we back up those Exchange backends the SharePoint backends and the OneDrive backends where all of these data entities are being stored to, other than Teams themselves, which we can back up and restore directly with our Explorers.
Nice. And then another question here, they're asking, what about backing up SharePoint Online?
Yes, we can
Fully
back
supported.
up. Fully supported, absolutely. Sorry, fully supported. So we did focus a lot on Teams and some of these other applications, but we definitely support Exchange on-prem, Exchange online, SharePoint online, the full gamut of those critical apps.
Nice. And then, is there any integration between Microsoft Team or Microsoft Office 365 Backup and Veeam Backup and replication?
No,
Yeah, so
these are
like
separate products.
Yep, you got it.
Nice. Let's see. There's another question here. They're asking, what can I do to protect the data that's backed up from getting infected with ransomware?
There are many different ways that you can approach ransomware. There really is no one hit kind of solves it all. It's all about layered protections. We offer many different abilities to back up to different types of storage. So even with pivoting types of ransomware, they're not likely to hit all credentials types. We see it most often hit a single type of data entity. And as long as you're creating boundaries between that and your other data types, you're going to be more protected in the end.
Great. That's a good question. Any other security that's around protecting sensitive data that's backed up?
So we actually have some features coming in version 6 that allow us to delegate restore rights to specific users and self-service portals, which allow just the users themselves to restore the data without the administrator needing to have extra access. Right now, we also have it, we call our audit API, that allows you to go in and configure notifications based on if anyone is accessing, say, your CEO's email. And well, we'll hold there's no ticket request for CEO email restore. That might be a concern that you want to investigate, kind of scenario.
Excellent. Yeah, I look forward to that. Let's see. It looks like we're starting to run out of time here. I know we were trying to keep these events relatively short and succinct. Corinne or Edward, are there any other questions out there that you feel we have time or important to cover before we wrap up?
I think we covered them.
Awesome.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Same here.
Well, this has been really educational. I learned a lot about protecting Office 365 on this technical deep dive session. Edward and Corinne, really excellent presentation. Thank you so much for being on the event today.
Thanks, David.
Thank you for having us.
And I encourage everyone out there to check out the QR code that's right there on the screen. You can just scan that with your phone and sign up for the trial download of Veeam Backup for Office 365, free for 30 days. And so I encourage you to check that out. I'll leave that up there. I also want to remind you to download the Conversational Teams Backup ebook. It's there in your handouts tab as well. So I'll leave that resource up while I announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize. This is going out to Steve Hyde from Wisconsin. Congratulations, Steve Hyde from Wisconsin. We'll also contact our best question prize winner as well. Thank you to everyone who joined us on the webinar today. I hope that you learned a lot. I know that I did. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.